Welcome back to Tracy Take Tuesday, where Ryan and I release a mock draft every Tuesday leading all the way up to the 2025 NFL Draft. My name is Tyler, and I've already introduced my brother Ryan, and Ryan will be the main guy today as we are doing his fifth mock draft, I think,
Yeah,
so far the
5th.
2025 offseason. We
Yeah,
started towards the end of the 2024 season, and now that the playoffs are going on, super fun time as you're watching great football, but we're also talking and thinking a lot about the future. So if you like mock drafts, you like off-season content, you like football, and you want to just kind of just think about football for a little bit, take away from all the things going on in your life. Subscribe to the Tracy Take as we have a bunch of content for you coming up here in the off season. And if you like the content we put out and want to help the Tracy Take grow, subscribe to the Tracy Take, tackle that bell to get notified, and leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you think each team should do, and down in the comments below. And Ryan, with that being said, I say let's send it over to you.
yeah, let's get into it here. So I'll pull up the PFF mock draft simulator. I'm sure everyone who's watching this is pretty familiar with this, but so for 23 teams, we are in the offseason. As a Patriots fan, as a Falcons fan, we are looking to 2025. 2024 season no longer has anything to offer us.
Hey, quick question. And
Sadly.
you said 23 teams, so people who are already commenting, we are recording this during the
Yeah,
Monday
that's fair.
night football game.
Yeah.
So the wild card game of the Vikings and Rams. So their positions might change, but they're picking so late. At that point, we're really going to be kind of talking about theories in general, anyways. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, yeah. So both of those teams will probably be picking somewhere in the mid 20s. I am doing trades, but I was a little sparse with my trades this go around instead of my usual lots of movement. But like I was saying, as Patriots fans, as Falcons fans, we're in the off season. We're there, but luckily our teams got quarterbacks last off season, and so as we approach this draft cycle, the big question is going to be where are these quarterbacks going to go, and I for one have very strong opinions about. Well, I guess both, but one in particular, the one that I really like and think has a really high ceiling. I do think like when you compare him to past quarterback classes, maybe he's not the highest rated prospect, but I think like you go look, Trey Lance was taken third overall. So I think you could really make a case for a guy like Cam Ward to go number one overall. I think when you look at his ceiling and look at his arm talent and his ability to kind of ad lib some really nice plays all throughout the season, you've kind of seen him progress. And he is an older prospect, but he's also still a very young uh, quarterback in the sense of he doesn't have a lot of traditional quarterback experience just yet. He's only had a quarterback's coach for, I believe, the last 3 seasons when he got to Washington State. And so I think you go get Brian Callahan, a potential elite trait young quarterback here at number one overall. And I think that's a solid pick for them. I like him a lot, and I think he has a lot of room to grow. But I think if you can fill in that space and have him reach his ceiling, you have a franchise caliber quarterback. And so
Well,
to me,
oops, sorry, go ahead. Finish
uh,
your
it,
point.
it
Sorry.
and to me, there's only a few blue chip prospects in this class, and I think it is worth the risk on Cam Ward to go and do that, just because the ceiling is high enough, in my opinion, that it's worth it.
Yeah, and especially for the Titans too, like they're a quarterback needy team, and just with the
Yeah,
overall value of the position, I think Cam Ward's going to go here, even though he's not the best prospect of this class. Same thing can be said about Shedeur Sanders. I think there's better prospects overall.
yeah,
I'd say half a dozen to a dozen better prospects. But to your point, though, like Cam Ward, he does have the potential. I'm curious. I feel like his ceiling's like I feel like his ceiling will be a good quarterback in the league, like a Tua, or maybe even like maybe as high as like a Jordan Love, maybe not comparing him to those guys, but just like that's like kind of where their mark's gonna be. I feel in the NFL. But that being said, though, I think one thing that's going to be interesting is that you touched on, and even now too as a Falcons fan, Michael Penix comes over and he's 24. I'm going to be very curious if teams start to maybe go towards more veteran college quarterbacks now with the way the college is shaping up and with NIL. You just get more reps, more experience instead of guys who are younger and like athletic specimens, but
yeah.
still have some redefining to do. So I think Cam Ward is going to kind of also go into that case study there on like which direction, because that's going to be very interesting. That being said, though, I think he's going into a good spot. Tennessee is also again one of the two best quarterbacks in the class.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's a really good segue kind of going into these next couple of picks here. So, both of these next two teams, the Cleveland Browns and the New York Giants, are quarterback needy teams. But when you look at that front office, when you look at the coaching staff and you look at just that organization as a whole, those jobs are basically at stake this season. If these teams do not produce this season, that they will be moved on from. And I don't think going here for both of these teams and drafting a Shedeur Sanders, who I think is a first round caliber quarterback, but I like we had this kind of we went through this exercise on a scale of Bryce Young to Kenny Pickett, which is Bryce Young went first overall, Kenny Pickett was a 20th overall pick. Where is Shedeur Sanders on that scale? He's probably closer to Bryce Young, but like he's on that spectrum in my opinion. And for me, I don't think the Browns or the Giants are in a situation where they can go and take a guy who's going to definitely have to come in and sit and develop for at least 10 games to probably a full season. He doesn't have that like superstar franchise caliber quarterback ceiling, in my opinion. I think he could be a like plus starter consistently, but I don't know. I don't ever know if we'll be discussing Shedeur Sanders as a top 5 quarterback. And so for me, I'm going with Abdul Carter here for the Cleveland Browns. He has some work to do. He's not a perfect prospect, but I think when you just look at his physical traits, the fact that he was only an edge rusher for 1 year, he was one of the best edge rushers in college football. He's like I don't know if I already said this. He's just an athletic freak, and he does so many things well for being so inexperienced at his position. And I think would be a really solid pick. They could potentially be moving on from Myles Garrett if they feel that that is the right move from this organization. I know that has been talked about as if they really want to like kind of throw it all in and rebuild from nothing. But I think if you pair Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett, you have the best pass rush in the NFL. That would just be absolutely insane. He does need to work on his run defense. He can get a little overzealous, kind of run himself out of some plays or get overpowered by some tackles. But I think you can kind of coach that out of him because it really just comes down to being patient and just working on his anchor there as well. So, and then next up, I think this is a really good fit, but I'm going with Travis Hunter here to the New York Giants. They need secondary help. This front 7 is relatively good, especially when they're fully healthy. And I think you throw Travis Hunter on the back end of that. He's a really solid corner and man coverage, zone coverage. But then in key situations, you also have the ability to throw him out there on offense. And you have a Malik Neighbors, Travis Hunter duo that I think would be really, really solid. So kind of curious on your thoughts on that. Those are kind of the 2 quarterback needy teams at the top, taking a pass on Shedeur. So I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts is I think you just want your Patriots to trade back and get an absolute haul for everybody that's going to trade up with your team now with Shedeur Sanders falling to 4.
I
I'm just
actually,
playing though.
yeah,
So my one thing, I get the logic behind it, especially into the Browns maybe moving on from quarterback if they don't think he's really the guy, and I think that's a very fair argument about Shedeur Sanders like not being ready. But that being said, though, I think the Browns take Travis Hunter. He's the best
yeah,
prospect in the class. He's the best non QB prospect I think we've seen in a really long time, and what he would bring to that team. And then with Myles Garrett pass rush, then you have a lockdown corner like him, and you throw him back there with Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. Also, I think they would make it work, and then the overall kind of balance that he brings to the offense. But then the way that it panned out, and not saying that Abdul Carter is a bad pick, but then I also think too the Giants, if Shedeur Sanders does fall to them at 3, I think that they take a quarterback
yeah.
there as well.
And
Now, if Shedeur Sanders not there, I think Travis Hunter at New York would be great. So
yeah,
they ended up with Travis Hunter anyways. I think we're going to find out real quick on what the viewers think of these first 3 picks. It's plausible. It's a long way until the draft. We got 4 months, right? 3.5
yeah,
months.
yeah.
And
I,
so a lot of things can change here between now and then.
the main purpose of this take is I'm just not fully sold, especially for franchises that like the coaching and the front office staff, like their lifespan could be really short at these organizations. Do you really want to throw a top 3 pick at, in my opinion, one of the more questionable first round quarterback prospects that we've had in the last 4 or 5 years? And that's really to me what it comes down to. Brian Callahan is in his 2nd year there. Ren Carthon was just let go from Tennessee. they're not firing Brian Callahan at the end of this season. Well, like maybe they could, but I think that would be ill advised, especially like given the situation. They'd already just let go of Vrabel, then they would just let go of Brian Callahan. So I think they can afford to take that risk on a quarterback. The Giants and the Browns need to win right now, and I just don't feel that Shedeur Sanders is worth that bet at here at 2 or 3. And
That's
I,
fair.
I do have the Patriots trading back, but I actually wanted to talk about this situation here. I don't really like this spot for New England. If Abdul Carter makes it, I think you take Abdul Carter in a heartbeat. You're running that card in the same way you ran in the Drake May card. That's kind of how I have developed on Abdul Carter. I think he's a phenomenal player. Other than that, I think they take the best offer. Um, there's not a lot here that I feel like really solves the Patriots' problems at this point in the draft. There's not really an edge rusher that I like that fits their system. You could take Tet McMillan. I still feel like even if you take Tet McMillan, you still need a more of a playmaker like wide receiver. And so I don't necessarily love that fit. Like similar to like your Falcons with Drake London. Uh, the best player on the board is Mason Graham for me. And I like you already have Christian Barmore. I know he's a little bit of uh, a question mark with his blood clots, but I'm going to have the Chicago Bears come up here and take what is my far and away uh, the best offensive lineman in this draft. So they give up 10 and 41. They have the draft capital to go do this. They still have uh, their second round pick from Carolina. I took the less valuable second round pick. It evens out. It's like an 80-point difference in favor of Chicago based off of the draft tech trade chart. But I'm going to have them take Will Campbell here. I don't like that pick for New England because New England has a ton of interior offensive linemen and they cannot afford for the 4th overall pick to not be like a tackle if he is drafted as a tackle. Now, none of those interior offensive linemen are as good as Will Campbell, but again, I still think that they would rather trade back, take the extra pick, and give up what is probably one of the best leaders and football players in this class in Will Campbell. I love Will Campbell as a prospect. What he brings to this Chicago Bears team. So the story of LSU football in the number 7 is the best playmaker gets to wear the number 7. Will Campbell was the first offensive lineman ever to be awarded the number 7. He wasn't able to wear it, so he wears it as a patch on his jersey. But I just think that is such a cool, like, little anecdotal story to show how important LSU felt Will Campbell was in their system. The dude's mentality is awesome. He blocks like he wants to literally hurt you. And he's just a phenomenal player. He's a great locker room guy. I think you go out, you solidify that offensive line in front of him, in front of Caleb Williams, whether he does make it at tackle, whether he does have to kick inside to guard or potentially even at center. I think he could do all of those things. So I think that's a really solid pick there. They had to give up a little bit, but they have the draft capital to go and do it, which is the big thing there. So next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars here. We're going to go with Will Johnson, the corner. They really need corner help. They have some great edge rushers, but really nothing on the backside of that defense. They can go get one of the better corner prospects that we've seen in a while. I know he's coming off a foot injury, but at 6'2", 200 pounds, last year he had some of the best tape that a corner has ever really put out in college. And so I think he did a really good job there. And then this is where I have Shedeur Sanders coming off the board. There are the Raiders ties there already with him and Tom Brady. I think you look at the organization as a whole, they're going to have a lot of turnover on the front office and the coaching staff. So they're going to have time to bring in Shedeur Sanders, develop him, and then hopefully put him out at his best there. And I think that's a really good fit. You go look, he has Brock Bowers. They have Colton Miller. They have some other offensive line pieces that aren't awful. You give him a reliable defense, so he's not having to force throws and like games are really getting away from him and you're putting him in bad spots. So I think that's a really good fit there for Shedeur Sanders.
Okay, I like it. I like it. These 3 picks I get, the way that's panned out, I could actually honestly just see this Chicago trade happening just in general if the Patriots
Yeah.
aren't in love with anybody, and then the Bears have that other additional second round pick, so they could be a little bit more aggressive. My one thing though, I think do the Bears have a third rounder? I don't think they have Oh, they do. They don't have a fourth rounder. So yeah, so they
Yeah.
could use that pick and still have their traditional 3 picks as well.
Yeah, and it's also I gave them a little bit of a discount on that pick. One, because I don't like as New England in that situation, I don't necessarily love everyone on the board, but I also like this is not you're not trading up for a quarterback. You're not trading up for this like uber valuable piece. You're kind of moving back. Like both parties are benefiting. One's moving up and getting a star offensive lineman. The other one's moving back and getting the pick. I think they just kind of take the best offer available. So
Mhm.
I think that's a good situation. Will Johnson, Shedeur Sanders, both make sense. Here with the New York Jets, this is where I'm going to go with Mason Graham. I like this pairing with Quinnen Williams and Mason Graham. I think that's one of the better interiors in the league. You have, uh, oh crap, what's the guy's name from Iowa State? Um,
Will McDonald.
Will McDonald. I kept wanting to say Will Anderson. I was like, I know that's not right. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson was injured this past season, so the Hassan Reddick deal didn't necessarily work out. But I do feel like Mason Graham getting in there on the interior, that's really going to help that run defense solidify. He also is going to provide. He's not just an interior defensive lineman with some pass rush upside. He's actually a good interior pass rusher as well. So I think that's going to be a really solid pick. Here are the Carolina Panthers. I like Nick Scorton a lot. He's my edge 2.5, 2, 3. There's another guy that I'll mention here shortly that I really like as well as of late. But Nick Scorton, he's going to be kind of that traditional 4-down lineman, defensive end, edge rusher. He's good against the run. He's really young and he still has really good play strength. So I expect that to get better as he continues to get older. But I think that's a really solid fit there. For the Carolina Panthers, because you get that pass rusher that you lost in Brian Burns, but you also help with that run defense. Hopefully, when Derek Brown comes back, that defensive front gets a lot better for this Carolina Panthers team. And that secondary is already fairly solid. So I think that's a good pick there for them. Here with the New Orleans Saints, I think this is just good value, but I also think you look at what they have. I'm going to go with Tedero McMillan. They have a lot of offensive weapons. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Jawan Johnson is a free agent, but Tedero McMillan, I feel like complements them all really well because he can be that outside X receiver, but he has a lot of positional versatility. And he's a reliable target that wins a little over 50% of the 50-50 jump balls. He's a good red zone target. So especially for a team that is having some offensive line woes, having some quarterback injury issues, I think he's a very reliable and friendly quarterback target here for the Saints. And then here, rounding out the top 10, the Patriots here at number 10. I'm going to go with Calvin Banks. I was torn on this one because as much as I like Calvin Banks, with a lot of these tackles in this first round, you're going to have the the problem of, well, they could make it a tackle, but there's a chance that they won't, and they'll have to kick into guard. Calvin Banks, I think, gives you the length and athleticism that you want out there. He just is a little tight in the hips, and he doesn't quite bend as well. He struggles to stay on blocks at times. He's a good run blocker, and he plays with good physicality. But there are times where, like, mentally, he like just tries to like bury opponents, and then he just like whiffs. And so I feel like he's a really solid prospect. He just needs a lot of coaching up to do. And I feel like he has a decent chance to stick out there at tackle. If he doesn't, then you can kick him into guard. But I think he has a better chance than Will Campbell, I think, just due to his length at sticking at tackle. Whereas I feel like Will Campbell is more of like the ready to go offensive lineman in this draft, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Well, because that's what I was going to actually question is why you trade
It,
back and take the second. Well, not everybody would say second, but like the second offensive lineman. But I can see your point if you're looking for more of a true tackle. I still feel if the
yeah.
Patriots trade back, like I get your logic, and I think Kelvin Banks could be a successful NFL player. But I would almost think you just go more for a more like athletic, a guy that could come in and like he could be a contributor day one, like a Jalen Walker, so to say.
Yeah.
Or if you
It,
scroll down a little bit more, uh, go
Josh
ahead,
Simmons.
Josh Simmons.
Yeah. And that is so if Abdul Carter is at 4 for the Patriots, that is a no-brainer to me. I think you had the worst pass rush in the league last year. You go and fix your pass rush with one pick. Like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Uh I I don't think Tetairoa McMillan fully solves your wide receiver problem. There's a good chance that Will Campbell, especially like at 4, doesn't solve your tackle problem. There's a good chance Kelvin Banks at 4 doesn't solve your tackle problem. I'm much more willing to take that risk that one of those guys is going to solve my tackle problem at 10 with another second round pick versus at 4. Now, I do think Kelvin Banks with his length can survive, has a better chance of surviving at tackle than Will Campbell. Will Campbell to me is Peter Skoronski 2.0. He's a great offensive lineman. He's just really, really talented. He just doesn't have the length to survive on the outside in the NFL. Kelvin Banks does. He just needs the development and the polish to do that. Whereas if you need an interior offensive lineman, Will Campbell is a plug and play starter for you.
Yeah. I think another just sneaky option here, and I know we still got a lot of picks to go through, but if you're going to trade back, you have that extra pick. And to me, there's not, I could see there being an argument where there's not too big of a difference between Kelvin Banks, who is there. Let me see this right here. Kelvin Banks and other guys like Wyatt Milam, Gray Zabel, Josh Simmons that might fall down to day 2. And now you have 2 second round picks. To me, then I'd be like, take best player available that's still on the board and take Ashton Genty. I kind of have that succession plan ready for Ramondre Stevenson, but who knows? It's a fun exercise. This has been a nice change of pace. I will say with all the action you got going on here.
Yeah, no. And I think like there are definitely other names. I highly contemplated Luther Burden and then actually James Pierce Jr. He's the other edge rusher that's I have at like edge 2 or 3 that has really kind of come on my radar as of late, just because he's really strong for his size, and I think he's just a really good explosive player. So I thought about that. I am going to go with Ashton Genty here for the 49ers. The CMC days are numbered. I think you can come in and you can kind of add a little bit more longevity to CMC's career by bringing in a back that he will basically split carries with, but you're not going to be sacrificing play on the field. So I'm going to go with Ashton Genty. I know it's not probably the pick 49ers fans want, but I think that's just a phenomenal pick. What Kyle Shanahan could do in an outside zone system. Also, you look at not his receiving numbers in 2024, but in 2023, where he caught I believe it was 38 passes out of the backfield. He had a really, really solid season. And I think he's well worth the 11th pick in the draft. And speaking of well worth the pick, I think Luther Burden here at 12 is a good deal for the Dallas Cowboys. He's a little sporadic and a little chaotic with his production. And then when he has the ball in his hands, he can be a little chaotic. But I think he is just a really solid kind of gadget wide receiver. He can run routes and he can catch the ball down the field, and he could stack DBs on go routes. He sets up kind of some digs and some crossers well, but he isn't going to do that at the highest level in his rookie season. He's just going to be a guy you want to get the ball in his hands, and I think you have CeeDee Lamb, you have some other guys that you can get the ball down the field to. So let's go get a crafty playmaker that who knows will be drawing up plays for the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe it's Ben Johnson. I think that would be an intriguing head coaching option there for them, but I think that would be a really good fit for Luther Burden to go down there and be kind of like a 1B to CeeDee Lamb. Here with the Miami Dolphins, another new name for me that I was actually put onto by another YouTube channel, but Armand Membu. I don't know if you've watched him yet. The tackle from Missouri.
You passed had a little. He's 21st.
Okay, so he was just recently updated on this PFF board. Holy crap, this guy is insane. Very athletic, a little, I don't say undersized, because he's not undersized in terms of weight and length and whatnot, but he's only 6'3", so that's 8th percentile for tackles. But athleticism, length, power, anchor, he has everything else. And he's just a really solid tackle, and he's a really good athlete. And I think you put him down there in that Miami Dolphins offense, I think he would be a really good fit. If he is too short to make it at tackle at the NFL level, then you kick him into guard and you have another elite guard prospect there. But I think he has the traits to potentially stick at tackle. Very, very similar, I think, kind of the story for the rest of these tackles in the draft. So I really like that pick there. This one is very vanilla, but I'm going to go with Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. I just like him. I I think that's a really good fit. Indianapolis needs a tight end. The like Tyler Warren's the best one, and he's well worth this pick. He makes plays. Just the fact that like think about they could line up with Anthony Richardson, Tyler Warren as kind of like a fullback, and then Jonathan Taylor as well, or put Tyler Warren in like the H-back position. I mean, shoot, put him in the Wildcat and then put Anthony Richardson. Like the amount of formations and things you could do with Tyler Warren in that offense, I think would just be absolutely insane. So I like that fit there. Here with your Atlanta Falcons, this is where I have James Pierce Jr. coming off the board. Like I said, I've started to watch him again, and the more and more I watch him, the more and more I like him. They kind of played him a little bit out of position, in my opinion. They played him as like a true like hand in the dirt edge. I think at the next level, he would do his best work as a stand-up linebacker. I think that would really allow him to maximize his explosiveness off the ball in his first step, give him some really good power, kind of coming into tackles at that wide nine, give him a better angle at the quarterback. But he's also a really solid run defender for being 242 pounds. That was one of the things that I totally underestimated about his game, kind of coming into this season, and just had that preconceived notion. Then you actually go look at like what he does. He holds his gap pretty well. He has a decent anchor and sets the edge pretty well when tackles try to kick out on him. So like, I think that's a really solid pick. And he's going to be your franchise's new, franchise edge rusher. And last but not least here, before I throw it over to you to get your opinion on these last few picks, we're going to go with the Arizona Cardinals. Another kind of like that Tyler Warren pick, a little vanilla, but I'm going to go with Tyleik Williams. Again, just another really solid performance in the college football playoffs. He's just been so stout and so consistent up front. I think that is exactly what this defense needs. Maybe he's not the best player on the board, but I think he's definitely worthy in that first round to be in that first round consideration. And he has some pass rush upside. When you're with a guy like that, you're hoping that your edge rushers, you have some really good edge rushers that can generate a lot of pass rush pressure and make guys step up into the pocket into him. But all in all, I think that would be exactly what that defense needs.
Yeah, a guy like Tyleik Williams too. He just seems to just always at least tie and like do his job. He always seems to do his
Yeah.
job, allowing for the rest of that Ohio State defense to just get after the quarterback. And we saw that I think in the Texas game as well. It's they didn't entirely have as great of the numbers as I think it looked like when watching the game, because it felt like what's his name, Quinn Ewers was just constantly like on life support, and he was making some
Yeah.
amazing plays just to get the ball out until the very end. So I think a lot of that comes from Tyleik Williams. I mean, Jack Sawyer is great also too. JT Moylau. It's just a great defense that Ohio State has, and he's one of the key reasons. So I like it so far. I could see even if we scroll up to the top here, no, like to the picks, I could see this being a lot of defensive heavy first. It looks like in the
Yeah.
top 10, and then even as you get to the Saints at number 9, like the second half of the I'd say the second quarter of this picks 9 through 16, that's when we start to see a lot of the main skill position players start to pop off. You know, like a Tet McMillan, like Ashton Jeanty. You see Tyler Warren to go on there. I think could easily kind of replace with Colson Loveland. Luther Burden's also up there as well. You see a couple other
Yeah.
good tackles. And that's, I think, to me, is kind of what this draft is going to be like in a nutshell. It's like a few select stud offensive players. Really, honestly, even two Ashton Jeanty's, I think, the main blue chip. Ted McMillan is like almost there, I feel. Luther Burden has a lot of good film. But really, there's only one or two blue chip offensive players, I feel, in this draft, but several good defensive players. And I think overall, this is going to be a much more defensive focused class as we
Yeah.
go look at the first round and look at all the defensive players that are going to be taken. And I think a lot of that is just going to be pick your flavor as well. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing some more of these guys' names rise up as we go through the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl. But in general, though, I like it. It's been a good mix.
Yeah. No, I think this is probably my favorite one that I've done so far. Granted, as more information comes in, you feel like you get better at this process, and then you watch the actual draft and realize you had no idea what you were talking about. But anyways, let's jump back into it here. And the Cincinnati Bengals, starting things off here with the second half. This defense, ever since Jesse Bates has gone to your Falcons, has just kind of been awry. Like they just haven't been quite the same. So I'm going to go and get just a do-it-all safety. Whatever you want to play in the box, he can do it. You want to play deep, he can do it. You want to cover in the slot, he can do it. Malachi Starks, just a really versatile safety that I think would add some good depth and some good playmaking ability to the back end of this defense. Do a good job making sure everybody's in the right spot, preventing big plays. He
I like
does a
it.
really good job back there, very consistent. Here with the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald, I think, had a really good year as a first-time head coach. I'm very curious to see kind of what the Seahawks do from here. Where do they build? Where do they keep going? So I'm going to go with Jalen Walker. They need some linebacker and some edge help. I know their linebacker play and edge play picked up as the season went along, but I think you can go get a guy that he can make a living playing linebacker on third and long, so he can come down and play on the edge and do a good job there. Just a very versatile guy that I think would bring a lot to the table. He could be your green dot on defense if you want him to be. I think that's a really good fit there as well. Here with the Denver Broncos, again, a little vanilla, but like sometimes like those vanilla picks, like they just make sense. And I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. He's a high-end possession receiver. You have Cortland Sutton, your outside guy. Marvin Mims is your explosive playmaker that can get down the field. Emeka Egbuka, I I use a stat every single time I talk about him, but at one point he had like 45 catches on the season. 35 of them were for first downs. So you go get an efficient passer like Bo Nix, a guy where almost all he does is catch first downs. I think that's going to be a really solid fit for this Denver Broncos offense. Sean Payton's going to know exactly how to use this guy. That offensive line played really well. And I think he might not be the gasoline that you pour on or that you put in an engine to get it to go, but he's definitely going to be the guy on 3rd and 10 and you need a play. He's gonna keep that engine running for this offense. So here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, after watching that playoff game last night, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit, but they need better corner play. And one of the guys that I've really liked throughout this process is going to be Jahdae Barron. He's just a really good player. He was a safety, then he kind of came down and played in the slot last year. And this past season, he's played outside, and he's been really successful at all three. So a versatile corner that can come in and play a variety of roles. But I think he could play outside at the NFL level. He could be a really good slot corner at the NFL level. But all in all, I think that's just a good pick to help strengthen that secondary. I would go maybe like if Malachi Starks, if he's there. My only thing is that safety room is good when it's healthy. The problem is it just needs to be healthy. So Jahdae Barron, I like that pick there. This is actually where I have my second trade of this draft. As everyone can see, Josh Simmons is still there. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't really need a left tackle. I know Dan Moore is a free agent, but they drafted Troy Fautanu last year, who's going to come in and be a good starter for them. So actually, the team that is being recommended to make a trade with, the Washington Commanders, are going to pay trade pick 26 and hold on, let me get it. 26 and 79 for picks 21 and 122. So they'll swap a third for a fourth, and then they'll both get to move up, or the Commanders will get to move up and select the tackle that they want. The big thing here is just Josh Simmons' athleticism. I think he's a bit of a risk because we don't know the details of that knee injury. And so we don't know how much that's going to affect him going forward. And I don't think it'll be like life altering or whatever for him. But it is just a concern that you need to pay attention to. So that's why I have him down here at pick 21 instead of in the top 10. Because frankly, if he didn't tear his ACL and he played out the rest of the season, we'd be talking about him as a top 5 pick. Like, let's just be honest.
Your Patriots will be taking him at number 4 overall.
Oh, yeah, most likely. And so he has that injury concern. He only has 5 games of like elite play. He was good last year at Ohio State, but he lacked some play strength, lacked a solid anchor. But he developed those things in the offseason, but unfortunately his season was cut short. Commanders can take that risk. I think this team is already good enough where they can go out and take that chance on a player where maybe he's not going to contribute this year, but in years to come, maybe he'll be not just a starter, but a plus
Mhm.
starter at that left tackle position. So, and the reason they make that trade, get in front of the NFC rival, the Los Angeles Rams, here at pick 22. I'm going to go with Trey Amos, the corner from Ole Miss. Just a good, long, physical corner. Put some receivers in hell this season. I didn't go back and really watch him until later on in the season, but I had heard that he'd been playing really well. He's not the like best athlete. Like he's not a Christian Gonzalez type athlete, but he's a good enough athlete that he can stick with these receivers, especially in a primarily zone defense where I think he can pass guys off and not have to stick with receivers with his long speed, which is I feel like where his athleticism is really like a little bit more limited. So I like that fit there a lot. I think he would be a good guy on the back end of that defense that already has an elite pass rush and an elite young front.
Well,
So I
it and that's what I think too with Trey Amos as well. From what I've watched, is I love his aggressiveness and physicality,
mhm,
especially the point of attack. And so, with Jared Verse and this young, aggressive defensive front that looks like
yeah,
it could be one of the better defensive fronts over the next several years, I think getting that like an aggressive corner like that would fit well into what the Rams are trying to do.
yeah, a little bit of Sauce Gardner with like Robert Saleh in that defensive front. He's not quite
Mhm.
the prospect of Sauce Gardner. I think Sauce Gardner was an all around like just a little bit better athlete and had like
Yeah.
better instincts. But I still think he's a first round corner for sure.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so here with the Los Angeles Chargers, Joey Bosa is getting older. Khalil Mack getting older and is also a free agent. I'm going to go with Mykel Williams. Get a really toolsy edge rusher here that I think could be a replacement for one of those guys. I just he doesn't have the production that you want to see from a guy with his physical traits. He had some injury issues, but I think you go look at some of his bigger games, like for the Texas game in the regular season. He and Jalen Walker both showed out at a high level, and he just has the tools that a defensive line coach like would covet. And I think if you can keep him healthy for a full season and develop him properly, I think you have a Pro Bowl caliber, All Pro caliber defensive end here.
Yep.
Again, kind of similar to Josh Simmons, comes with some injury concerns and whatnot. But
Well,
uh,
and I believe that's a very underrated point as well, especially position of need for the Chargers. Like everyone was talking about
yeah,
like their lack of playmakers, but to your point, even to actually add on to Khalil Mack, he might even retire as well. He is more retirement, but maybe the Chargers even move on for Bosa this offseason. I don't know if they will if Khalil Mack retires, but even also too on top of that, Poona Ford, Morgan Fox, and also T.R. Tart as well. I know they're all defensive tackles, but still, that's just other defensive linemen that are currently free agents that they'd have to
yeah,
bring back in or potentially could lose. So D line, and with how like deep this class is in the D line, maybe they go here, maybe they wait on D line, knowing that like it is a deep class and they want to take a skill position player that they like. However, at the same time though, too, it's not like there's too many great like receivers that are here that could be an impact immediately. Outside of maybe like Colson Loveland, he'd come in and be tight end one. But even to like Matthew Golden, Jalen Royals, Isaiah Bond, what are some other receivers here that I just don't.
Jaden Higgins,
Yeah, all those are guys I think you could take in the second round,
yeah.
or in day two. I
Well,
feel.
one of them you won't be able to take, whose name will be coming up shortly.
Okay, I'm
But
looking forward to it.
uh I really like this guy. I think he brings a lot to the table. The next pick is going to be the Green Bay Packers, which is Siobhan Ravel, which I just revealed. They need cornerback help. Jair Alexander starting to have some injuries pile up. For him, Eric Stokes is going to be a free agent. Go get a freaky athletic corner here whose season unfortunately was cut short due to a torn ACL back in like September or early October. But you just go watch him, and dude is just so fluid, has great instincts, and I really wish we could go get to see him at like a Senior Bowl or a Shrine Bowl because I think he could have a Quinion Mitchell type rise. But I really like Siobhan Ravel. I think that's good value here because I think he has traits to be a top 15, top 10 pick at corner. He just, again, similar to Mikael Williams and Josh Simmons, comes with that injury red flag, and teams get concerned with that. So next up here with the Houston Texans, we're going to go with Kenneth Grant, the defensive interior guy from Michigan, the other defensive interior lineman from Michigan. Really solid guy. I think with what D'Amico Ryans wants to do there, you have Daniil Hunter, you have Will Anderson on the edge. Those guys are responsible for causing and creating havoc in the backfield, whereas some of the interior guys, their main job is just to stop the run. And I know that that run defense has gotten better, but I think going and getting a guy like Kenneth Grant, spending a premium asset on that defensive interior, will just solidify it one even more, but then also add some pass rush upside to that position as well. And I know for a defensive minded head coach like D'Amico Ryans that he would probably love this pick and really like some of those big nasties there in the middle. So next up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is where we're going to have our next receiver come off the board. This is a new name for me in this mock draft, but a guy that I really like and I've watched a lot. I've gone back and forth on my opinions with him, but I think he's a fringe first rounder. So I wanted to put his name here just to kind of have this discussion. But Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver from Iowa State, I can't get enough of watching this guy run routes. He has a really good release off the line of scrimmage. He sets up DBs really, really well. And he's good after the catch. He's very fluid. And I think if you're a team that is looking to draft Tet McMillan, I think you need to weigh to yourself, like, okay, we can get Tet McMillan here, or we can get this player and then potentially get Jaden Higgins later. Because I think the difference is pretty close. He had 8 or 9 straight games where he caught a touchdown. He's a red zone monster. He has some ability in open space to make people miss. But I really like that pick. He was PFF's highest graded receiver in the 2024 season. But the dude is not in any way like the most explosive receiver you've ever seen. But you get him next to a DB, and it almost feels like they just can't catch him like in the open field. And it's a weird thing that some players have, but I really like him. He has one of the lower drop percentages in the league. He is a bigger guy, but I think he's going to be in that Drake London role where you'll have George Pickens and Calvin Austin and some of those other guys that are going to be on the outside, or some of the gadget guys. He's going to be your power slot type of guy where he's going to be that Emeka Egbuka, where he's going to have 45 catches for 35 first downs. And you might even have double-digit touchdowns based off of how good he is in the red zone. So I'm curious of Steelers fans' opinions of that pick, but we'll have to see there. So
I think Steelers fans will have a better opinion of any receiver when they figure out the quarterback position. I feel like some people are already kind of sick of Russell Wilson.
Oh yeah, well, especially after his playoff performance was not good. My biggest thing, there's just nobody at this point that I'm comfortable drafting. Even Jalen Milroe, I think, kind of played himself out of first round contention. I know like the traits are very enamoring, and maybe you could have a team come up at the back end of the first round to snag him.
Yeah,
But
I think they will. I think there will be, especially too with the way that your draft has gone so far. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns trade up and the Giants trade up to go and get Jalen Milroe. I know a lot of people are in love with Jackson Dart right now. Curious to see how he drafts. Not gonna lie, Will Howard doesn't have the biggest arm, but he's pretty accurate. Like maybe guys will be, and I'm not saying I would draft Will Howard in the first round. I'm just saying if guys fall in love with him. So there'll be guys I think that go out that teams will trade into the first round, just get an extra year because of you never know.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely possible. My biggest thing is like as far as quarterback goes, I know athletically and arm talent wise, all these guys are very different. I don't see there's a higher ceiling for Jalen Milroe, but there's like an equivalent or maybe lower floor than guys like a Kyle McCord, who you could probably get in the late third, early fourth round, who led the nation in big time throws. He did also lead them in turnover worthy plays, but still like had a really, really solid season that you could potentially get at a much lesser cost. So I'm just low on this quarterback class as a whole. And so I don't have any.
Everybody is.
No, I agree. I just feel like I'm lower than you on this quarterback class, I guess.
Yeah.
And so here with the Baltimore Ravens, we're going to go a little bit of a different route. Josh Connerly, Jr., the left tackle from Oregon, uber athletic, just uber athletic, and he explodes off the ball as soon as it's snapped. I was watching NFL Stock Exchange, and they said something that kind of just made me chuckle. Is like the ball gets snapped, and it's like Josh Connerly like explodes, and he's so athletic, he gets to the point so early that he like gets there, and he's like, "All right, I'm here. What are you gonna do now?" Like, and he just does such a good job of mirroring guys. He keeps his feet moving upon contact. Just does a really good job of getting in the way. And I know that's like an easy thing to sit here and say, like he gets in the way, but you would be surprised at how many of these guys like struggle to just get out in the way of some of these edge rushers and make them have to take a different route. His weaknesses, struggles with play strength. He doesn't have the best anchor that you want from a tackle. However, I think in an offense with Lamar Jackson and some of the moving pockets and things that they do in that offense, that'll kind of minimize some of his weaknesses. Go look at who is the right tackle that they just drafted from Washington this past draft. Oh crap! They just did the NFL Films thing where he asked Myles Garrett for his jersey.
Oh, the
Roger
uh,
Rosengarten.
yeah,
To me, a
he's
very similar player.
he was
In
Notre Dame.
no, you're thinking of Blake Fisher. That was the right tackle from Notre Dame.
Roger Rosengarten.
Yeah, Roger Rosengarten. He was from Washington. He was Michael Penix's blindside protector.
Yep. Okay.
But
You're right.
I know. Sorry. But Josh Connerly to me reminds me of like the left tackle version of that, where just athletic, little undersized, has a weaker anchor, but can kind of be minimized in a more athletic oriented offense. So here, as we kind of wind down with the last 5 picks here, gonna go through these a little bit quicker, but with the Minnesota Vikings, I'm gonna go with Omarion Hampton. Aaron Jones is a free agent. They need a bell cow back, and Omarion Hampton, if Ashton Genty was not in this class, I think we would be talking about Omarion Hampton even more. And I don't value the running back position that much. And I love Omarion Hampton. He is phenomenal. He breaks tackles. He has breakaway speed. And like he does everything that you want bell cow back to do. He can play on all 3 downs. He's a good pass protector. He runs with good vision. He doesn't let defenders take any easy plays where he runs out of bounds. He's always trying to hit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like Omarion Hampton there. Here with the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to go with Jihad Campbell. To me, and maybe I'm a Patriots fan and I'm biased, but ever since Tremaine Edmonds has left that defense, I feel like they've always kind of been scrambling to like throw parts together in the middle. And I think Jihad Campbell is probably the best true inside linebacker in this class. And Jihad Campbell can be that Tremaine Edmonds replacement where he's just going to be a force. He's going to fly through holes of the line of scrimmage and take backers on in gaps. And I think he's just going to be a really good fit there. I think Sean McDermott would love him up there. Philadelphia Eagles, another guy that I've really kind of started to like as of late. I'm going to go with Mike Green. He's a really solid edge rusher from Marshall. He led the nation in sacks. He did do it at Marshall, but he was a really good run defender, and he had a really good game against Ohio State in Power 5 in that Power 5 game that they played this season. And so I think he could really be an impact edge rusher there. You put him across from Nolan Smith, who just had a fantastic playoff game yesterday. So I think that would be another really solid fit. And then here for the last 2 picks, we're going to go back-to-back Ohio State edge rushers. I think JT Tuimoloau would fit this Kansas City Chiefs defense really well. You put him across from George Karlaftis. I think that would be a good fit. Charles Omenihu is a free agent. You kind of move Tuimoloau around. I just think it just makes sense in my head. And then Jack Sawyer, not the greatest athlete, but leadership quality to 1,000, I think. And he's just a very solid edge rusher. He makes tackles pay for making mistakes and reaching. He's a good run defender. And like he just makes plays. That interception against Michigan was fantastic down in the red zone. It kept that game alive for them, even though they ultimately didn't win. But I'm going to go with Jack Sawyer here to go across from Aiden Hutchinson. And so I know they have other pass rushers that they've traded for, but I think Jack Sawyer would be an upgrade at that spot. So
Well,
that
I
is
also think,
my fifth mock draft.
yeah.
Let me know what you think.
Well, and I think with Jack Sawyer, real quick, I think he's going to be a great complimentary guy in the NFL.
Yeah,
And so Aiden Hutchinson is going to bring so much attention already. And so I think he could fit well within that system. But in general, though, the second half, man, a very interesting, a lot of new names in there. And that's what's going to be
yeah,
really fun about
I-
this. A lot of risers and a lot of fallers. Like guys, I was even thinking about two guys that we haven't talked about that we normally do, but like Colson Loveland didn't make it.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Shamar Stewart didn't make it. Kenneth Grant fell. He did end up making it there. Let me see if there's anybody else that kind of missed it here. Seeing a lot of new names that have come up into the top 32 on the PFF, like Matthew Golden, I think would be an interesting one. Alec Iomanner has always kind of been around there, but he's even keeps creeping his way up. Wyatt Milam didn't
Yeah.
get talked about, and that's what's going to be very fascinating just in general with this class, as we've talked about, I think every time, but there's going to be so many. I bet there's guys we haven't even talked about yet that are going to be picked in the first round, and that's what makes the Senior Bowl
Oh,
going to be such an amazing event because so much money is going to be made and lost on that week. Every NFL scout, I feel like this is the most important Senior Bowl I think we've had in a long time. I know guys made some names for themselves last year, like Michael Penix and Bo Nix. Like we already knew who those guys were, but it really helped increase like their draft stock, obviously. But
mhm.
in this one, though, with the offensive line and defensive line talent, and maybe even the skill position players, it's going to be fascinating to watch. But really interesting. I think a very unique scenario that you've put together here that is plausible.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to do something different. Right now, if I had to put money on it, I think the Browns would take Shedeur Sanders at or I'm sorry. I if I had to put money on it, I feel like the Browns or the Giants would take Shedeur Sanders in the top 3. I would
Yeah.
not make that move. I think that is like if they make that move, they will be fired this time next year. Um And I just think like that'd be trying to force a pick. I think you're better taking best player available and going in free agency to try to get a veteran quarterback. I've heard rumors that the Browns are trying to get Kirk Cousins from the Falcons, which I feel like the Falcons would happily oblige in that situation. The Giants, I mean, you could go get a Justin Fields. Russell Wilson would be the less desirable option in my opinion, just because you kind of know what you're getting. Justin Fields at least you have some optimism there. uh like a Sam Darnold, or I don't think Sam Darnold will go back to New York, but potentially a JJ McCarthy trade. I think all are very interesting options there in that top 4. And on the back end of that draft, I wanted to bring in some new names. So like maybe the Jaden Higgins pick is like a little bit forced. Maybe Siobhan Ravel a little bit forced, but all in all, I wanted to bring in some new names, talk about some new guys there on the back half. And I also thought about having some teams trade up. I look at that Minnesota Vikings spot in particular. There are some like they only have 5 picks in this draft. There are
Yeah.
a lot of teams I think at the back end of or the front end of that second round that gladly go up and make another selection in the first round. I think of my Patriots like uh if a wide receiver they want is falling, if they want to go get another edge rusher, like let's say they want to jump in front of Philadelphia to get Mike Green, I think that would be a very plausible solution there as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, it,
I think
all in all,
that's something I'm going to tinker with. I think in my next mock is what it would look like for some of these teams to trade up into the first round. And I definitely I'll say this. I'm not saying Jalen Milroe is a first round quarterback. I'm not saying Jackson Dart is a first round quarterback. Will Howard or any of these guys, but I think it's just the value of the position. And if they could connect and get them to work within their system and develop them, then it's a position they don't have to worry about now, for the longest of time.
yeah,
It's like as a Patriots fan, you had Tom Brady. You didn't think about the quarterback position for 20 plus years. As a Falcons fan with Matt Ryan, I didn't think about the quarterback position,
yeah,
for 15 years. Same thing with the Colts, the Broncos. The Steelers are now having to deal with this. Is like after Ben Roethlisberger, like what is this thing called a good quarterback? So
yeah,
it's something I think a lot of teams it's worth risking. Even if it's just moving up just a couple of spots and trading up some picks.
yeah, and that is where like the quarterback position of all positions is like so different. And I think in reality, like let's take last year's draft class as a whole, and let's look at Shedeur Sanders versus the 6 quarterbacks that were taken in the first round, Shedeur Sanders is clearly number 7 in my opinion.
He's before Spencer Rattler. Like, there's not that big gap from like 12 to 155. Like, somebody would have taken
Yeah,
him in the third round. But
but
I agree with you there.
yeah, like he's clearly number 7. And like, let's take AD Mitchell. AD Mitchell went 58th overall. Where do you think AD Mitchell would go? AD Mitchell would be a top 15 pick in this draft class.
Yeah, probably.
Uh, and
First round
so,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And that to me is just where like this is just a weaker class as a whole. It's sad to say, but just these picks, these players aren't as good as we all would hope. Because
Mhm.
this is draft season. This is the time when the 4th overall team has hope to be a Super Bowl contender again. Like this is supposed to be that time, but this is just not that year for that. That
Yeah.
was last year when a lot of teams got their franchise quarterbacks and whatnot. But all in all, like I'm pretty happy with how this mock draft turned out. Let's go ahead, let's wrap it up here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what your least favorite pick was, what your favorite pick was, what would you have done for your team, what would you have done differently. Other than that, we'll see you guys next time.